Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
I'm Bill Dries with the Daily Memphian. We are talking with Memphis City Council member Chase Carlisle, and this is on the record. We record Wednesday, April 20th, 2022, and we have a couple of topics to discuss. We'll start with the one that might occupy most of our time on here, the proposals by fellow council member Martavius Jones to amend the city charter to, one, have partisan primaries for city mayor and all 13 city council positions, and number two, extend the council's limit of 2 consecutive terms to 3 consecutive terms. Jones would put those 2 charter amendments to voters in referendums on the August ballot. I think it's fair to say from the council debate this past Tuesday, as we record this, that you are not in favor of either one of these.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm really not. And I'd be voting against them. I think it's self-serving for politicians to want to extend their own terms. If we wanted to have some sort of, nobody from this body could benefit, maybe I might be open to that. I certainly don't think that the average citizen of Memphis thinks that politicians deserve any extra time, even when we have good politicians, people we like. And I'm sure the term good politicians are rare, but what term limits do outside of just getting fresh ideas in is it holds politicians to a clock. It creates a sense of urgency to get things done on behalf of your citizens, and as a leader, the things you want to do. And so, and then on partisan elections, I don't even know where to begin without getting visibly upset about even the concept and discussion. And I like to think that I have a pretty high emotional IQ, but in this day and age, when as a legislator, especially in the local level, the idea that I want trickle down partisan politics to come into Memphis really infuriates me.
Well, the thing that you talked about most during the council's discussion of this yesterday in executive session and at the afternoon session is that you and several other council members expressed that you think that the council will become like the Shelby County Commission, which has partisan primaries, and you think that's exactly the wrong way to go on this.
I think that partisan politics has no place in the local level. And I know that people will say, well, the county commission has it. And, Democrats will say Republicans did it and it's their fault, but now we're living in it. To be frankly honest, the county commission should go back to nonpartisan politics too. It has, again, the federal platforms and state platforms have no business in local politics. And so the counter argument is, well, it at least helps people identify where you are on the scale of ideological. It's like, well, okay, I'm identified as a Republican, but I believe in equitable transportation, and I believe in affordable housing investments, and I believe in a law and order, and I believe in supporting a police department. So tell me where that fits in on the federal Republican platform or the Democratic platform. Nowhere. They're unrelated. And so what you end up doing is having people go to camps because they're making decisions that they believe are going to upset somebody in the local party, executive party or the state level. And I just, that doesn't exist today, and it certainly could later. And then of course you see some of the in the primary races now, you see people's rhetoric out there trying to either run farther to the left or farther to the right in order to convince the base voters that they're the right person. And it just creates a bunch of dog and pony shows that have no business in local politics.
But the council has taken votes on things like the pandemic measures and things that could be considered a political litmus test. What's the difference then?
But the difference is those are their individual beliefs on a certain item, not a party platform that they're required to abide by or be debonified, right? Jim Strickland, a former Shelby County Democratic party president, endorsed a Republican Senate candidate in an open race because he's pragmatic enough to know that Brent Taylor is going to win and that we need to have allies up at the state level that we've got good relationships with. And the world may not like that, but these are the realities of the world we live in. And so all of a sudden you've got people, well, debonify him, he's a Democrat name only. That's just total garbage. It's pragmatic approaches to real solutions. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a Memphian. And I'm going to do whatever I can do to make Memphis better, period. And I don't care what the federal Democratic Party or Republican Party has to say about it. And so I don't want that involved in my ability to be a Memphis legislator.
Do you think that the county commission's problem is not so much the primaries as it is the combination of personalities?
I think personalities always come into play. I think that I believe that you're having this, you're seeing ideological issues start to crop up in the middle of a primary now. I think that you see it when we talk about things like MATA. That's government overreach and wasteful spending. It's like, the reason I think that that's nonsense is any business leader with half a brain of sense understands that it is the government's responsibility to talk about transportation, and that transportation correlates with economic growth. And so you've got suburban Republican commissioners talking about wasteful government spending because that's a Republican talking point, when in reality, all of the data suggests that investments in transportation is exactly what government should be spending money on because it helps with GDP. And the only reason that they're out there saying that is either they really believe it, or it's just become a really good conservative talking point of big government is bad and wasteful spending and taxes, and the city of Memphis is, it's partisan talking points versus individuals out there saying, yeah, I really don't love the idea of spending all this money on transportation, but I think it's in the best interest of the region as a whole, so I'm going to do it. And you've got a county commissioner out there that believes in that, and all of a sudden it's, that person's, they're terrible, wasteful spending, that doesn't align with Republican beliefs. They're not a real Republican. And it's just like, where did, it's just, again, it's partisan talking points. Go to any, I'm sorry, go real quick. You go to any talk show, Fox News, MSNBC, all these places, they found their target audience and they just hammer partisan talking points over and over and over again. And they do it while sidestepping the issue itself. So I guess the best way to sum it up is partisanship seems to be, the rhetoric seems to be all issue driven, right? Let's talk about the issues, but no one really wants to talk about solutions. And real legislators, real people that care, people like me, are solutions driven people. I don't care about the ideologies. I care about the solutions that they're going to drive and move Memphis forward.
That's a handy segue to talk about the term limits question. As you know, the argument on this is that 2 terms is a pretty steep learning curve for council members to get acquainted and learn the rules of the road and try to get something done. So are there conditions in which you think 3 consecutive terms would be acceptable to you?
I don't know. We'll see. I think what I go back to is do I think that 2 4-year terms creates 2 to 3 years of learning? Sure. But I think that's up to that council member on how much time and energy they want to put in to learning the ropes and getting up to speed and the amount of reading they want to do. Technically, we're part-timers, but we have several members that have set flexible schedules, or they're retired, or they've got opportunities. So I think it's a little bit of a cop-out to say that it's a steep learning curve. It's really saying I haven't put in as much time and work to get up to speed as I should have, right? CJ Davis has been in her role as Memphis Police Chief for 1 year now. I said to her on Tuesday, you now own the police department. So she got 1 year to get into position. She probably doesn't think that's super fair. She may understand it, but the reality is the council member has to put in the work to get up to speed, period. So I don't know that I buy that as a viable argument. I think when you run for office, you have to be willing to put in the work to make things happen sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. So what do the votes look like on the council to get either or both of these questions on the August or November ballot? Are there undecided votes out there on putting this on the ballot?
Well, we had a litmus test. I will tell you, so this is really hard for me because I hammered and pounded the table about police residency and allowing the voters to speak for themselves. And this certainly fits in that bill, in that bucket. But I think that the votes will be there, no surprise, to extend term limits and put that question on the ballot. We had a litmus test vote on partisanship, and it fell 6-6-1. And for those listening, an ordinance, unlike a resolution at the city council, requires 7 affirmative votes to pass. And so when it was 6-6, it failed. And so I'm willing to bet you that the councilwoman that abstained is going to get a significant amount of pressure to vote for putting that item on the ballot, whether it goes in August or November. I think they likely end up on the ballot, which is, again, really unfortunate. And the reason it's unfortunate is I'll bring this home. Councilman Jones, the sponsor of these, talked about how we spend 8 hours or 8+ hours every other Tuesday, and that pales in comparison to the mayor. My response to that is 8 hours every Tuesday would be more than enough time if we actually stayed focused on the business of improving the lives of Memphis. But instead, we waste significant amount of time, I mean, hours and hours and hours of time talking about things that don't actually help Memphis. If you went back and audited the time that my council spent together and the amount of time we spent talking about affordable housing and transportation and blight and the budget versus being against or for some federal initiative or a state thing or having some nonprofit group come in and do a presentation, you would find that probably 15% of the time we've spent talking about the issues that could affect Memphians' daily lives with real solutions, not just talking about it, but real solutions. And I think, to me, that's what I go back to is I'm so frustrated that we're spending our time talking about this versus spending the entire year talking about the budget. We talk about budget season being this big thing, and we only talk about it for a month, and then we never really go back and continue to talk about ways we can make the budget better. And the administration loves that. They love the council spinning their wheels while they are out there running the city. And I'm just, look, Bill's smiling in the I call it like it is. You can agree or disagree with me, but I wish we spent more time focused on the task at hand than all these other distractions.
Speaking of the budget, the mayor presented a $750 million operating budget proposal to you all yesterday as we record this, a $95 million, I believe, capital improvements budget proposal to the council. What are your initial impressions of what you heard from him?
So I'm going through it right now.
The budget book.
Yes, I'm going through it now. I think at a high level, I'm really excited about several things. One, for the citizens of Memphis, the economic indicators of what we're seeing are really great. We are climbing our way out of the pandemic, and we were one of the slowest recovering areas out of the Great Recession. So we have more sales tax revenues than we had anticipated, which is a great indicator of what's going on with tourism in our local economy. So that's something to be really excited about. I'm very excited about the investments in our police department. And it's not a matter of pro police, more police. It's about those officers that are there today being paid what they deserve. You can't expect to have a talented, experienced, high quality police force and pay them less for a harder job, right? We have more calls and intensity than any other department in our agency in our area. And we were not paying that. We were not the leader in pay. So the 10% gets us to where we need to be. And I'm hoping that we may even be able to find a little bit more to pay our officers, because honestly, I want us to have the best compensation package in the country, period. I think if we're serious about making an impact on crime and having the best and brightest, that's a big deal. I'm very excited about the harbor docks matching money. And of course, I'm excited that we're continuing to invest and accelerate Memphis, which is going to be really important. And then lastly, and outside of crime, most importantly, having the first transit, dedicated transit funding source is very, very exciting. I probably spent more time behind the scenes working on affordable housing and transit than I have any other subject matter other than police pay. And so I'm very, very excited that that's in the budget. And it's a starting ground only to do better.
Right. Because for those who haven't read the story or kept up with this, basically the money for that dedicated source of revenue from MATA is as tax incentives known as pilots, payments in lieu of taxes, roll off. The increase in the property tax revenue that the city gets from that goes into that revenue stream. And I think the estimate is $4 million in the fiscal year that starts July 1st. And that could grow to as much as $11 million in the out years of that.
Yes, and people have to keep in mind, I think I was miffed that there were some individuals from groups that have been trying to lobby support for this, that this isn't enough and it's too little, too late, and we have to start somewhere. And I think people need to keep in mind that this is one bucket that's dedicated, that's not going anywhere, and it doesn't mean that there are not other opportunities to add to the transit funding over the years. In particular, as we march to 2026 or 2027. The city will hit a debt cliff, retire a significant amount of debt. We're targeting somewhere between $40 and $60 million of additional free cash flow that could go towards a part of which could go towards transportation, in addition to state and federal grants. So it's an incredible first step, a very necessary and very needed step, and I'm very excited about that. The only other thing that I'll be focused on as we get into budget season are ways that we can really, in a meaningful way, contribute to affordable housing around the city, so that we can stabilize the economy.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll leave it there for now. We've been talking with Memphis City Council member Chase Carlisle. I'm Bill Dries, and this has been On the Record.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community. The Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.